All right, so last few times we've been here, this is probably the most odd way you've ever heard a series taught. So this is the fourth part of the series I've been teaching on hope. This is the last part, so the next time you come, you get something new. But so we've been doing this for, 10 weeks now, in between 10 weeks now. So we'll finish up tonight. But for the last few times we've been meeting, we've been talking about there's a hope. There's a hope for each of us, a hope that is provided through Jesus Christ. And it's that hope that each of us want to experience life change. And we often see others experience life change in their life as they get saved or things are going in church. But for a lot of us, we get to a point where we're just kind of stagnant and we're not seeing the change that we want to see in our life. And so that's what we've been talking about. We believe in Jesus Christ. And there are plenty of people out here that we've met, that we know, that we probably have in our family, that we talk to on a daily basis, that believe in Jesus. But their lives have not changed much since the point that they got saved. They've not seen any real growth happen in their life. They've not experienced the life change or the things that God promises in His Word. So we started off saying this a couple weeks ago, that believing is good, but following is better. It doesn't take any real commitment to say that we believe in Jesus. It doesn't take any real commitment to say that we believe in anything. I told you the example of this chair right here. I could stand up here and I can preach about this chair and I can talk to you about this chair and I can tell you how wonderful and how great and how awesome that chair is and how it will provide you rest and how it will provide you comfort, how it will provide all these things. If you get tired, you'll be able to sit in that thing and it'll help you regain your strength. I can tell you all about that chair. I can probably tell you enough that some of you will get so excited that you'll come up here and sit in that chair just to experience the things I've been talking about. But if I myself never take that step to actually sit in that chair, then I will never really experience all that chair has to offer. I may know all about it. I may know all about the peace and the rest and the comfort that that chair will bring, but until I actually step and set myself in that chair, I will never experience. So believing is good, but following is better. Jesus calls us to a much deeper place than just believing. He calls us to follow Him. Following someone to know some kind of relationship that you have with an individual. That is exactly what Jesus is looking for from us, a relationship. He's just not after us to perform a bunch of religious activities, to come in here, to talk around with each other, to pray 100 times, to sing a couple songs, to hear me talk. But He's after our hearts. And we talked about the fact that there are many people, those same people that probably believe in Jesus, that believe that really truly what God wants for them is their behavior. They believe that if they can keep a set of rules or manage all the behaviors, then God will be pleased with them. But remember, God is not after our behaviors. He is after our hearts. And for most of us, and for a lot of people, the idea of giving ourselves over, to giving our hearts over to Christ can be overwhelming. I mean, think about it. When we ultimately realize that if we give our heart to someone else, or we give our life to someone else, then that means we ultimately give up control. And that's something that a lot of us, I know for myself, is one of those things that I don't ever want to let go of. I want control of a lot of different things. Matthew 16, 24 through 25 says this. It says, "Then Jesus said to His disciples, 'If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross and follow me. And if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give your life for my sake, you will save it.'" Jesus tells His disciples that in order to follow Him, that you have to give up your own way. We have to give up the way that we do things. Now, many of us sitting in here are married or have been married. And there was a moment that the guy and the gal stood in a ceremony, and we stood before some kind of officiant, and we stood there and we looked at each other and we looked at those eyes, and we were either filled with love or lust or whatever we were filled with, and we looked at each other and we said, "You know what? I want to spend the rest of my life with you." And the person that was there officiating the service looked at each other, and we repeated a bunch of vows, regardless of what we said. And ultimately, at the end of those vows, we looked at each other and said, "I do." That was the one thing. Listen, I remember when we did our wedding, Hannah and I got married. I had 3 words or 3 sentences I had to say the entire time I was up there. I do, I will. And I'll practice those things. I do, I will. Because I was not going to be the one that messed everything up in the wedding, okay? You know, everything had to be perfect and everything had to be great for her. I had to do, I do, I will. I do, I will. That's all I had to remember. And I had my part nailed, okay? But we got up there, and what does my wife want to do? Crack jokes. She wants me to laugh the entire while I'm up there. Some people cry during the wedding. My wife and I laughed at each other the entire time during our wedding. And I had the hardest time remembering, I will, I do. And it's her fault. It's her fault. But ultimately, we stand up there and we say, I do. We make that commitment. It is the culmination of everything that we've done, all of our relationship up to that moment in time, up to that point right there where we're getting ready to say something, and we exchange rings and we do all those things, and we end it all with saying, I do. We're saying, I do. I do give you my heart. I do give you my life. And I'll be there with you through thick and thin. A lot of us said, till death do us part, through sickness and through health, whatever other things that people say during their ceremonies. We say, I do choose to live life or follow with you. But also in that moment, not only do we say I do, but we're also saying I don't. We're saying I don't choose to do anything else but stay married to you. I choose to say I don't to anything else that involves interfering with our wedding. We're choosing not to pursue our own ways, but we're choosing not to pursue our own selfish desires anymore. That's what that ceremony is all about. Before that point, we were 2 separate lives. We were doing our own thing. Listen, I was 28 years old. When you get married when you're 28 years old, you're pretty well stuck in your ways. Okay? There's a whole lot of arguments that we've had in our relationship just because of the fact we came in our relationship pretty much stuck in our ways. And when you put 2 people together as hard-headed as me and my wife, it's fun. It's absolutely fun. Don't elbow her. Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, I'll tell you, okay, this ain't part of the message. This is for free. So, my wife, she brought it up. So you notice that I didn't bring it up. My wife is as hard-headed. Hard-headed is the word. Some people use the word determined. I use the word hard-headed, okay? So we were in our living room, and we were picking on each other, and we were play fighting and doing all this other stuff, and I took her arms, and I pinned her to the ground because I was done. I was done with the fight, okay? I was done picking around. I was done. And I said, I'm done. Well, bless her little heart, she decided she was not done, and that she was ready to fight. And that we were getting ready to have a WWE wrestling match right there in the middle of our living room. And she was going to do whatever she had to do to win. Okay? Committed, hard-headed. And I'm like, Hannah, look, stop. I'm done. Let's just stop. No, we're not going to do it. And I realized real quick, we'd been married, 6 months? I mean, it wasn't even a year. Okay, we've been married 12 years this year. In September, it'll be 12 years. And in 12 years, I don't pick a fight with my wife anymore. 0. Now, I poke fun at her and we poke around with each other, but when it comes to the point where we're going to wrestle, I am not doing it. Because the last time that we did it, and when it was 6 months into our relationship, I thought I was going to have to kill her to make it stop. I was about to go to jail because she wouldn't stop. We ain't stopping. She got so mad at me. That red shirt she's got on, her face was as that red. And I was like holding on to dear life. I was sitting on her, and I had her arms pinned down, and I'm like, you are not getting up until you say, I'm done. Because I'm not letting you go because you're going to hit me, and I don't want that. Hard-headed. And I said, I do. I choose you, baby. Choose you. But that's what Jesus is telling us in this scripture in Matthew 16. He's telling us that if we're saying I do to him, then we're also saying that I don't to whatever else is out there competing for our affections. Because listen, just because we make a commitment to something else doesn't mean the world's just going to stop onslaughting you with all kinds of things for you to do, whatever that may be. Everything is still going to fight for your affection. And in doing that, Jesus tells us that yes, you're going to lose your life. If you follow after Him and you choose to follow after Him and pursue Him as a disciple, then yes, you're going to lose your way of life. But He's also saying that in that moment, you're going to pick up a life in a whole new dimension. He says that you're going to actually pick up an entirely new life. John 10:10 says, a thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, and I have come so that you may have life and have it in abundance. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away, and look, new things have come. And that's what we've been talking about the last few weeks, that we've been talking about hope. There's a hope for each of us. A new life, a new beginning, a second chance. A hope that we can experience all that Jesus paid for in His death and resurrection. That's what the hope that lives on the inside of us is. And that's what we've been talking about. Hebrews 10:23 says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess. Let us hold unswervingly, hold steadfast to the hope that we profess. Every one of us came in this room. Every one of us came into our relationships with hopes and dreams. Christians and non-Christians alike. This is not just held up for Christians. We all have hopes and dreams and plans and ideas and things the way we want, pictures of the way we want life to turn out. We all have things that we desire. For some of us, it's a dream job. For some of us, it's a fairy tale relationship and a wedding. For others, it may be a dream house. We all have them. But as Christians, we ultimately have the hope that one day we will either experience the rapture or the great catching away, or if Jesus should tarry, we will leave this earth in death, and at that very next moment we will wake up in the arms of a loving Savior. That is the ultimate hope that we as Christians hold on to. That is the thing that when we wake up into the morning, that's the thing that we should look forward to. That is the ultimate calling. That is the goal that we are trying to obtain. That is the area where we're going. You want to know why I'm so joyful? That's the reason. That nothing can separate me from the love of God. There's nothing that anybody can do on this side of heaven that can keep me from the love of God. And no matter what happens during the day, good, bad, or indifferent, if something happens in today that takes me out of this world, I'm going to be in the arms of a loving Savior. I'm going to meet Jesus Christ face to face. That's exciting. That's exciting. That is exactly what that writer of Hebrews is talking about here. That there is the thing that we need to hold on to the midst of everything is that hope. So he said, let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And he says, let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Now we understand that hope that we're after comes through Jesus Christ, through our acceptance of God. But the writer now takes it a step further. He says, let us consider, let us think about, let us study, let us plan, let us create, let us come up with ways that we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Now, I don't know about you. I'm 39 years old. I'll be 40 in August. But when I think about Spurs and I think about Cowboys, I think about John Wayne. Okay? I grew up, my dad watched John Wayne movies. And when cable TV come around and those things were on TV, we watched them all. I've probably seen them all 6, 7, 8, 12 times. Okay? Love John Wayne movies. But that's my picture of a cowboy. Sitting tall, riding his horse, holding his rifle, the big leather vest, the cowboy hat and the boots. The stereotypical cowboy. That's my picture of a cowboy. But it seemed like if you've watched enough cowboy movies, that every time that those cowboys walked around, they jingled. Like they had $5 worth of change in their pocket. But it was those spurs that were ringing on their boots every time that they walked around. And those spurs were on there for nothing more than to provoke the horses that they rode. When they got on the horse, they'd take that spur and they'd job it in the horse and just were ready to go. It was there to motivate the horse to go in the direction that the rider wanted it to go into. And this is the picture that the writer of Hebrews is trying to portray to us. He says, let us consider how we may spur, how we may motivate, how we may help steer one another toward love and toward good deeds. We should be surrounded by people that keep encouraging us to keep moving forward, not only with our walk with God, but also in the areas of how we can use our gifts and talents to minister to others. That requires us desiring and allowing ourselves to be open to relationships and letting people get to know who we really are. And for the most part, every person that you talk to, for the most part, will stop right there. We all look at each other and we all say we love each other with the love of Christ, but I don't want you to know anything past what you see right here. It's the reason that we go home, we shut our doors, turn off our lights. It's the reason we have caller ID on all of our phones, because we want to control who gets to talk to us, when they get to talk to us, and how much information they truly know about us. The bad thing about it is, for some people sitting in the room, you go home, you cut off the lights and shut the door, but you also shut the door on your mate, your children, and everything else in your house. You don't really want them to know who you really are. We just want to have a relationship that just says basically, just me and Jesus. And that's the mentality that we carry forth as Christians. We just want to be able to handle things for ourselves. We want to be self-sufficient. And a lot of times that means not only shutting out people, but shutting out God. We want to be in control of everything. Hebrews 10:23 again says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. In our culture, this is something that we try to avoid at all cost. Instead of looking for ways to congregate or get together or have meetings, we are looking for reasons not to see people in general. Now, I'm like Cliff Black. Now, me and him have this in common. If I'm in the grocery store and I see somebody that I know and I catch a glimpse of them and I see them trying to make a beeline, trying to hide, Lord, I will holler across an entire store. I don't care who hears me, how many heads turn around. We ain't going to play that game. We went to Georgia this past weekend for my brother-in-law's wedding. And we got in late. It was like 9:30. And so the first thing you do when you get to Georgia after you've been traveling all day, you go to Walmart. That's the thing you do. I don't care if you go wherever you go to Walmart. That's the thing to do. Well, we went into Walmart, and there was my brother-in-law and his bride-to-be. They were about halfway down the aisle. And I said, Hannah, hey, watch this. And now I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in the middle of Athens, Georgia. These people don't know me. They don't know my voice. They don't know anything. And I walk in there and I do my best Jerry Clare impression. Hey! Like that. Everybody in the entire store but them turn around. And I said, well, okay. I said, hey! Like that. About that time, everybody, including them, turned around. They were like, oh my God, really? That's what you get when you get to know me, okay? Don't try to avoid me in the grocery store. If you see me, come running, get it over with and get it out of the way. You'll be good. But that's the way we are as people. My dad used to get in a store and he'd get in and he'd see somebody. He'd say, let's go this way. And he'd turn and he'd go another way. He'd go a half a mile out of his way just not to have to talk to somebody. My dad was not a people person. If you put me and my dad in a room, you'd think we'd look alike, But you'd think, how in the world did he come from him? I have no idea. My dad was a man of very few words, and he was that way on purpose. He didn't want to talk. And me, I used to get on his nerves because I want to talk all the time. That's just the way it is. But we're looking for ways not to see people. We get distracted. We find things to do. We just want to isolate ourselves out and figure it out on our own. We want to live this life in a bubble. We want to live this life in a shell. We don't need help from anybody. A lot of times if we hear advice from somebody, we just automatically dismiss it. We just don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear anything from anybody. We want to figure it out ourselves. But the very essence of Christianity in and of itself is the idea of family. Jesus is only building one thing on this earth, and that is his church, his body. Ephesians 4:15 and 16 says, rather speaking truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, for whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. If we want to experience the real growth in our lives, I'm talking about the kind of growth that Paul's talking about here in verse 15 when he says, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. I'm going to break some hearts. We've got to be part of a body. We got to be around people. We got to be open to relationship with people outside of those that live inside of our house. Growth is not just a personal project. It's not something that we should have to tackle in and of ourselves and by ourselves. Yes, there has to be some part of personal growth in your life. There has to be some kind of desire to grow or want to grow. But past that point, we shouldn't have to try to do everything in and of ourselves. Very often, that is exactly the way we want our lives to be. We want our growth to be an individual thing. Just me and Jesus. That's all I need is just me and Jesus. Just give me Jesus. That's all I need. I don't need the world. I don't need anybody else. I just need Jesus. We don't want anyone else to know about the things that we're struggling with. We would rather just deal with those things in our own time and on our own terms. Listen, guys. Growth is not a personal project. It's a community project. And again, most of you, the first desire to have, the first thought that you may have is to just push back on that. Say, no. You don't understand. I don't need anybody else. I can do this on my own. But Paul in Ephesians says that if we want to grow that, then we have to be part of a body, joined together, everybody doing their part and everybody working properly. And that point, when everybody's together and doing their thing, is when the body grows and builds itself up in love. There are many, many reasons why we don't like this idea. And I'm just going to give you a few of them, and there's plenty more than what I'm going to say here. But here's the first one. Jesus is awesome. People are not awesome. Jesus is awesome. People are not awesome. People are just hard. In general, people are just hard. People are a mess. I think the terminology now is people are a hot mess. And when you spend time with people, and you get to know people, think about the people that you work with, the people that you spend more than just 30 minutes a day with, or just seeing in a store somewhere. Think about the people you with, and you start to know people past a surface level, past point of saying, hey, how's it going? We quickly realize that people are messed up. Their lives are not perfect. They all carry a bunch of junk with them. And they all feel like they need to tell you that bunch of junk. People are a mess. And most of us are just completely uncomfortable about being around someone else's mess. I am that person. Okay? I have just a little bit of OCD in my life. Okay? Now, I've learned to tame a little bit of it. Now, I've learned to tame it by doing two things. I either do what I need to do or I don't do what I need to do. I don't have this middle ground. I haven't got the middle ground figured out. I'm either like really lazy with something or I'm just so driven I'll get on your nerves about it. But if I come to your house and you come in and you say, hey, come in, visit for a minute. Come in, sit down. We got a couple things to get ready. And you put me on your couch. And if your couch has a coffee table in front of it, and if you've got magazines or coasters or anything else sitting on that coffee table, if they're not arranged in any way, and it's just a hot mess sitting on top of your table, if I'm there past 5 minutes, your coffee table will be arranged. And I'll start sorting stuff, and I'll put things over here in this place, and I'll sort your magazines by date, color, time, whatever I need to feel like they, alphabetical order, however I feel like they need to be matched up. I'll spread them out. Because I don't like being around people's mess, okay? I don't like it. Here's the problem. Sometimes I don't even like being around my mess, okay? Don't come to mine either. That's the bad point. But most of us get very uncomfortable when people bring their mess around us. We just don't want to be in the midst of it. We don't want to get involved in it. Number 2, Jesus is very personal. Being involved in a relationship in a community is very public. Jesus is personal. Being involved in a community or in a church is public. Again, when we get involved in people's lives, when we begin to be active in someone else's life, whoever that may be, and we try to pursue and get involved in a relationship, it opens ourselves up and it shows people the way that we do things. And that's something that we just don't normally do in general. We don't open ourselves up to let people know how we maintain or how we manage or how we do anything. We don't want people to know. It simply makes us uncomfortable. We like to project that we have all of our ducks in a row. I don't know how many people. And me and Hannah giggle every time it happens. They come walking up to us and they say, how do you do it? How do you keep all them kids in a row? How do you keep them behaved? How do you do whatever? We would love to tell you that we knew. We don't have a clue. We get up in the morning and we just hang on like everybody else does. We just do the best that we can do. We don't have no secret formula. We don't have no secret tricks. We just get up and maintain. It's that simple, guys. If it looks like we got all our ducks in a row, that's awesome. It's not true, but it's awesome. But we do. We try to hide that stuff. We don't want people to understand how big a mess our lives are. It's just not fun to let people know that, hey, I don't have it all together. I don't profess it. I don't claim it. But people look at you and they expect you to have it all together. They look at you and if you don't, they're the exact ones that turn around and they walk away from you and go, that boy right there is a mess. Can you believe that he came out of the house looking like that? Did you see his kids? I'm telling you, we get them dressed sometimes, and that's a miracle. That's a miracle from God that we got them all dressed and out of the house. Not on time, just out of the house. So thirdly, it's easier to offer help than it is to ask for help. I know this is true for me. It's so much easier for me to look around this room. I'm good at this. I can look around this room and notice someone, and I can see the need that they have, and I can run, and I can be right in the middle of it, and I can help somebody. I can offer whatever I need to do. But if I were sitting in this room, and I came in this room, and I was carrying a bunch of boxes, and you come running up to me and said, hey, you want me to help you? The first thing come out of my mouth, no, I got it. I'm good. I got it. Because we would much rather suffer in silence. We would much rather pain it. We would much rather feel all the excruciating time and tiring and effort it costs to do something rather than just look up and say, yeah, it'd be good if you grab 3 or 4 of these boxes. Go right ahead. Because If we do, then we feel like we're showing somebody that we have a weakness, that, oh, we can't handle it all. We need help. But that speaks volumes about our society in general. We want people to think that we all have it together, that we are self-sufficient, that we can handle our own business. Our culture in general promotes the idea of this super individuality. You can do it by yourself. You can handle it. You can make it. And we place value on people that are willing to take responsibility for their own lives, people that are self-sufficient, people that seem to have it all together. Think about the last time. Now listen, I haven't watched talk shows in a long time, so I may mess this up, but this is the best example I can come up with. Years ago, when I watched talk shows, when there were like Phil Donahue and Sally Jessy Raphael, when they were real talk shows that were on there, or something on the news, or something on ESPN, we hear these stories about people that have messed up. And they've come on national TV to tell some kind of story about the mess that's going on in their lives. Sometimes they even call press conferences to let people know that they have messed up. And inevitably, someone will mention about during this whole time, when somebody does that, they'll mention the fact. They'll say, you know what? This person is brave. They're courageous for the fact that they were able to come out in the midst of all that was going on and tell people that they messed up. We speak about like, that's so awesome. You're so amazing that you come out here and told everybody that your life's not perfect. Why? Why? Why should we even consider it to be brave and courageous to admit that we're not perfect? Listen, none of us are perfect. None of us. But that is what society demands from you. They are trying to tell you that you have to have it all together. You have to be perfect all the time. In order to succeed, you have to have all your ducks in a row. But it's never going to happen. We project that idea on everything. Just look at magazines, look at Facebook, look at Pinterest. We see images of perfect living rooms, of perfect houses, of perfect meals, of perfect families. Now, if you were on Facebook last week, you probably saw a picture that my wife posted of a family picture that we took. I call it the miracle picture. All my kids, including my wife and myself, are looking at the camera and we're all smiling at one time. And to this moment, I was there when the picture was taken. I still don't know how it happened. Because I promise you, the moment before that picture was taken and the moment that was after, my kids were poking, prodding. Aubrey was sitting 3/4 of the way, halfway on the bench because she didn't want to be near her brother. She had her own pink can. She wasn't touching them. I won't talk to them. Avery didn't want the car that he had. He wanted Kaylin's car, and they were fighting and fussing, but somehow or another, all them kids looked at the camera all at one time and smiled. I don't know how they done it. It's a miracle. But we see pictures like that, and immediately people see like that. Wow, your family looks so amazing. Whew, if you only knew. God, if you only knew the fight we had to get them in the clothes that they were wearing to have that picture. But we look at those images, and we see those things and we think, my God, look at how perfect those things are. And we look at that and then we compare it to our own reality and we think, my God, we're horrible. My house doesn't look like that. My house ain't never looked like that. It ain't never going to look like that. But the reality is those images that we see are, for the most part, are not real. I don't know if you've ever seen any food shows on TV or anything that happen on TV, but if you've ever seen them do food photography, have anybody ever seen shows how they do that? It's amazing. But the production that goes on behind the scenes to make a meal look good is crazy. That's why when you see those Hardee's commercials or you see those ads in paper and you see that hamburger on there and it's perfectly cooked. They cut it right down the middle and that meat is just perfectly red. All the condiments, all the lettuce and tomato and all the pickles and onions are just right square in the middle. They're cut right down the middle and they're staying on top of the hamburger. And you think, how in the world did they ever do that? On my best day, I can stack a hamburger up and it looks something like that, but as soon as I try to pick it up, pickle goes squirting that way, the tomato goes squirting that way, the onion goes that way. Never in my life have I seen a hamburger that perfect. And nor will you ever. Because they've took paint, glue, sticks, lacquer, all these things that we don't even eat, that we put on furniture to make things shine, to make that food look that perfect. Yes, I said lacquer, paint, and glue. If you want to know how they do food photography, it's crazy. They will do whatever they need to do to make it look whiter or redder or whatever. It's not real. It's not reality. But we look at those things and we hold ourselves to a standard that we can never maintain. That idea that we have to have it all together, that we have to do it all by ourselves. I know I've made dumb statements like this before. I've heard my mama say some dumb statements like this before. Why can't you kids be like those kids? They are so well behaved. Why can't you act like that? Or how many of you ever heard this? Why can't you act like your brother? Why can't you act like your sister? And you're thinking, I know my brother. He ain't the angel you think he is. He ain't the saint that you think he is. My mama, to this day, will curl her eyes when she hears some of the stories that my brother and I are now telling her. We live in our own houses. We have our own families. And now we're telling her stories of when we were like 16, 17 years old and stuff that happened that she had no clue about. And she just like, it makes her shake and shiver. Like, how in the world did y'all? Mama, we were not the angels that you thought that we were. Again, but this is the kind of image that we want to project out to everyone else. We want everyone to think that we have the perfect marriage, the perfect family, the perfect body. We want everyone else to think that we have it all together because they look like they have it all together. But Jesus came to show us a different kind of idea, a different kind of community, a different kind of living. And back in Ephesians 4 and verse 11, Paul describes this community. He calls it the church. He says that so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Basically saying God gives different people different gifts so that we can serve the community, serve the church, so that we can build one another up. And he goes on to say this, until we reach the unity in the faith, and that is the knowledge of the Son of God, and become mature. That is, that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to grow in this thing that's called Christianity. We are trying to grow into the measure and trying to attain to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. God uses people to grow people. If you don't get anything else out of this for everything, God uses people to grow people. Realize that. C.S. Lewis states in his book, Mere Christianity, he says, He, Jesus, works on us in all sorts of ways. Through nature, through our own bodies, through books, sometimes through experience, which seem at the time anti-Christian. But above all, He works on us through each other. Again, our natural tendency is to push back against this. We don't want people in our lives. We don't want people to see the dirt or the things that are going on in our lives. But we treat God the exact same way. We say stuff like this, God, I want you to heal my body. I want you to fix my circumstance. I want you to use me. I want you to work through me. But this is how I want you to do it. This is the idea. This is the expectation. This is the thought process I have. This is the way that I want you to do it. I want you to do it on my terms. Do it my way. There's a great story in the Old Testament that describes this. It's found in 2 Kings. And in 2 Kings, we find the story of Naaman. And Naaman wants God to heal him. He wants God to cleanse him. But he struggles with the way God wants to do it. He gets totally hung up on the delivery mechanism that he wants to use. 2 Kings 5 says this. It says, verse 1 says, the king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. Now basically what that says is that God used Naaman to bring Aram, the king of Aram, wealth and power and great victories over armies. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. Now here's the contrast that we get, this picture, this idea that I want you to hang on to. Like Naaman, many of us have this exterior appearance that we have it all together. Like we're this great mighty warrior. People will look at you and say, I don't know how you do it. You're such a prayer warrior. You're such all these things. But on the inside, as soon as they say something like that, on the inside of you, there are things that are just eating away at you at that very moment. We know that there are things on the inside of us that are not very presentable to someone else on the outside. Some things that we'll just never show to anyone. It may be a bad habit. It may be a blind spot. It may be a secret that we're carrying around with. It doesn't matter what it is. You just know that there's something on the inside of you. Right now, all of us know that there is some insufficiency on the inside of us. Something that would, if we don't deal with it, we know will make us ineffective in doing what God has called us to do. We know it. We know there's things. We know that there are things going on right now that I know for myself, that if I had to stand up here and tell you everything that was going on in my life, some of you would curl your eyes and run the other way. It ain't all perfect and glorious in my life. It ain't all perfect and glorious in your life. There are things that we hold on to, that we hide out in secret. Pastors, listen, can be extremely vulnerable to this. Because of all the places and a lot of things that are going on, pastors have sometimes in a lot of places have no one to hold them accountable for anything. They're in this fight by themselves. Listen, if you don't pray for anybody else in your life, you need to pray for your pastors at all times. Because a lot of times a pastor feels like he's all by himself, like he has no one else to talk to, because the people place him on such a high pedestal. They don't see him as a human being. They see him as a Superman. And they see him as knowing God and having this great, strong relationship with God. And how could anything ever be wrong in their relationship? And pastors generally don't have people that will pull them to the side and say, listen, I see this thing going on in your life. And if you don't take care of it, it's going to keep you from fulfilling the call on your life. And if you don't take care of it, it may just destroy the thing that you have built in this life. There is something that has been lost in this world, and that's the idea that we should allow someone to speak a word of correction into our lives. We don't want to be told that we're wrong. We don't want to be told that we're doing something that's not correct, that we're doing something that could hold us back and keep us from fulfilling our full potential. Matter of fact, when somebody tells us that, first thing we want to do is like, you're a fool. Why would you ever say anything like that to me? Who are you to speak into my life? But in doing that, by cutting ourselves off from that correction, we are allowing a darkness, just like Naaman. We're allowing something like a leprosy on the inside of us to eat us from the inside out. It's not something you see physically. It's not something that you see on a day-to-day basis. But eventually, it's going to come out. And by that time, if we don't deal with it, and if that time that darkness makes its way on the outside of our lives, the destruction has already been done. The damage has already been done. And it may not be recoverable. And that's scary for me. I don't know about y'all, but that's scary for me. I don't want to make it to heaven one day and think that I'm going to meet Jesus and Jesus said, here was the plan I had for you, and you didn't fulfill it because you're an idiot. I had all these people lined up that were saying things to you, and you wouldn't listen to them because you were so hard-headed or you were so puffed up in pride that you couldn't hear them, and you thought they were just being mean. I don't want to be that person. So he continues on in verse 2. It says, and at this time, the Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel. And among the captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. And one day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go see the prophets in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. He said, go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out, carrying out his gifts, 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy." And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, "Am I God, that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him: "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel." And so Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message: "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of your leprosy." Now, for most of us, for me, this sounds exactly like what Naaman would want to hear. He had just traveled approximately over at least 130 miles with this group of people, with this letter from the king, going to visit the king of Israel. And then he gets turned away and he gets sent to the prophet's house. And Elisha sends his messenger out and says, "Go do this and you'll be healed." Now look, he drove all that way. He didn't drive, he rode. It wasn't a 2-hour trip. Couple days to get there, 3. He did all that, and the prophet told him he would heal him. That's exactly what he showed up for. That's what he wanted, to be healed. But did Naaman rejoice? He said, in verse 11, he says, "But Naaman became angry and stalked away. And he said, I thought he would certainly come out and meet me," he said. "I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord, his God, and heal me." Now seriously, think about it. Do you approach God the same way? We ask him to do something for us, and he responds back to us with something that we are not expecting. He says he wants to heal us in community. He wants to do all these things in the body of Christ, and he tells us certain things. But our mind, we walked into our prayer room with an expectation, with an idea of what we wanted God to do for us and how we wanted him to do it. We brought the plan to God. "Here it is, God. I need you to bless this right here." And when it doesn't come out the way we want to, we get upset about it. "I'm not doing that. Are you crazy, God?" He was expecting, he had a different idea, and he was expecting God to heal him. He just didn't realize, Naaman didn't realize the way God was going to do it. He was upset about it. Elisha offers Naaman the very thing that he desired, healing from the disease that would eventually kill him, yet he despised the delivery method of which he was going to bring the miracle. He despised it. He stalked away angry. And to all of us, for most of us, that seems ridiculous. Why would you walk away from your own miracle? We would never have God offer us exactly what we want and get hung up on the delivery request, would we? Would we? Naaman continues on. He says, "Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed?" So Naaman turned and went away in rage. Naaman thought he had a better idea. He had a better plan. He was mad. He was enraged about this. How dare God ask him to dip in that dirty river? How many of us have heard or said the same thing? Why does God want me to be a part of a body? Can I not just pray about this and God, you and I take care of it together? Why do I have to be a part of a church? I've heard people say this over and over before. I've heard people say that they have absolutely zero problem with Jesus. They love Jesus. Jesus is awesome. But they will never be part of a church. We're not going to don the door of a church. Do you not know what they've done to us in the past? Jesus came, he lived, he died to pave the way for the building of the church, the body of Christ. And yes, the church is not perfect. Sometimes it can be messy. But He didn't give any of us in here, the authority to come up with a better plan. None of us. We don't have the right to say, okay, God, I understand, but we're going to do it this way. Part B. I've heard it said this way before, that there was that God asked a man one day to build an ark. Everyone mocked and laughed at him, told him how stupid he was to build that creation. But there was a day that the door closed on that ark and the rain began to fall. And now inside that boat, there were a lot of dirty animals in it. It wasn't air conditioned. It probably smelled. It didn't have an all-you-can-eat buffet. It didn't have a dessert bar. It wasn't like a cruise that you take when you go down to Florida and head out to the Caribbean. The ark wasn't perfect, but it was the place to be at that moment in time, because everybody outside of it paid the price. The church is not perfect. The church is messy. If we go back and read through church history, there are some really bad things that have happened in the church or that have been done in the name of God. But yet, despite all those spots, all those wrinkles, all those blemishes, this is the vessel that God has chosen. He placed all of His gifts into people. He places His people into a body, and that body is designed to help the individual members grow into the fullness of the measure of the stature of Christ. Naaman looked over at that Jordan River and said that if this is what it takes for me to be healed, no thank you. But thankfully, Naaman was surrounded by some people with some reason. Verse 13 says, but his officers tried to reason with him and said, Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you would certainly obey him when he says simply go and wash and be cured. And then it says, so Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. You see, Naaman had come to the prophet just to be healed, but he wanted God to do it on his own terms. But when the man of God told him what he didn't want to hear, he had to swallow his pride, listen to someone else give him advice, and do what the man of God told him to do. And when he did what the man of God told him to do, God did something more than just heal him. He cleansed him from all the leprosy. He restored his skin to that of a young man. He removed all of the age, all the scars, and all of the outward wounds that people would have saw. God wants to do the same for each of us. He wants us to lay down our way, our ideas about the way that we want God to do things. He wants us to realize that we have to lay down our pride and ask for help. Some of us have been battling for things for a long time, and we just keep trying to battle it on our own. And God will say in these moments that there's someone around you that has some wisdom or insight into your situation that you are missing. For some of us, we're just lonely. We don't have anyone or anywhere to turn, and God would say that He has placed you in a family. And some of us just need to allow ourselves to be open to someone speaking into our lives, allowing God to counsel, allowing godly counsel and wisdom to help and guide our growth. You'll hear me say this over and over and over again, no matter how many times I stand in this pulpit. We need each other. Always. This world needs us, and we need them. And as we put these pieces of the body together, we will see some of the greatest miracles in this world ever happen. Some of us strive so hard to look for a miracle, and we're trying to do it in and of our own selves. We're trying to think that if we get into our prayer closet and if we pray 7 times a day for a month, that God will finally hear us and bring about that healing or bring about that restoration, when God truly wants you to get into a body. He wants you to get into a body where you're connected and experience the healing gifts that He's placed in that body. For some of us, that's all we need. We need to be connected to a body. Some of us literally just need to stop what we're doing and look around and find somebody and say, listen, this is what's going on in my life. I've tried and I've tried And I've tried. I've done everything that I possibly know how to do. And I can't do it. Can you help me? And then we have to have the sense of a sheep and follow what God is directing us to do. God will sometimes use the most unlikely people to speak in your life. But we have to have sense enough to recognize that God is trying to help us. And I'm going to tell you something. Most of these things that you go in your prayer closet and pray about, the answer is not going to come in some form of miracle that's going to drop out of heaven. The answer is going to come in the form of a person. And we need to keep our eyes open for that person. Who is God trying to use to get that miracle to work in our life? Where does God want us to be to receive that miracle? If Naaman hadn't been surrounded by the officers in his group, he would have walked away and died of leprosy because he was too stubborn to listen to the direction that God was telling him to do. I've been there. I know. I've been there. You don't know how hard it is for me sometimes when I don't have my dad to call anymore to tell me that that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Or, yeah, that makes sense. That's what you should do. And you say, well, wait a minute. Should I take the advice from everybody? No. Don't take the advice from everybody. Look at people that are growing, that are continually moving. You see people that are producing fruit in their life, and you see things happening in their life, talk to that person. What's God doing in their life? How are they moving? How are they going? How are they moving up? God's a God of growth. God's a God of change. God's a God of second chances. God's a God of restoration. God wants to see life change in each and every person in here. We're not designed to be anchors that hold this thing in. He's the rock. He's the one that's not moving. He's the one that's not changing. But He's asking us to follow Him and to see all the fullness that He has to offer. Let's stand.